What's up, LOFT family? Welcome to Perseverance Pays Part 2. And where we're going, this is Part 2 of a series that we started last week. And we're going to end it next week at the barn with a college athlete panel. And last week we talked about the parable of the persistent widow and Daniel. And this week we're going to dive into a story of the three amigos named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or as my son's Veggie Tales says, Shack-Rack and Benny. And this was a series that I really felt convicted to do after diving through James over spring break. I had some time with the Lord and felt like this is a time of year where a lot of us in the school year really check out, are really moving on to the next thing in life. And I'll be honest, it's really easy to want the next phase in life. It's really easy to not be present here and now, but want something that's coming down the pike. And because we think it's better. But I promise you guys, perseverance pays. James 1:2-4 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing." Our motto this month is no struggle, no progress. And I mentioned last week that this was a tattoo my teammate Nick Neal, who's still playing professional basketball right now, had across his chest that says, no struggle, no progress. And that really stuck with me. And there's a lot of truth to that if we don't go through the struggles, if we don't go through the hard times, we don't progress. We don't become the person that God wants us to become. And I want to show you again in this lesson today how you have to embrace the grind, how you have to appreciate the hard times. Because if there is no struggle, there is no progress, I promise. Perseverance defined as persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. And I love the example of perseverance that plays out in the story of the three amigos, Shack-Rack and Benny. And we're going to dive right into Daniel 3. And I'm going to be here for a long time. So please go with me right now to Daniel chapter 3. We're going to read verses 1-30 together. And there's bits and pieces that I really wanted to read, and I'm like, man, I got to read this whole thing because there's so much here that I just have to get to you guys. So we're going to read through these 30 verses together, and then there's 3 points that I want to make at the end of this story that I really want to digest. Chapter 3, verse 1, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning, fiery furnace." Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Therefore, at the time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared, "King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning, fiery furnace. No struggle, no progress. We're going through some serious struggle right now. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Because of the king's order was urgent, and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answered and said, "But I see 4 men abound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door in the burning fiery furnace, and he declared, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not any power over their bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their clothes not harmed. No smell of the fire was on them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. And so for perseverance to pay off, you got to do 3 things. I want you guys to write these down. I want to unpack what we just read into 3 points. Be ready to jot some notes down. The first one, know what you believe in. In verse 12, there are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. So even though there was a law, these men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, knew what they believed in. And they weren't going to disobey the God that they served. That is how we have to be. And this past week, I was training Lewis Jackson. He was a point guard at Purdue University, and we were playing, and it was a really critical moment in this live scrimmage, and one of the players that he was playing with took a bad shot. And he said, "You got to know the score. Like, you got to know. Like, you just got to know." He just kept saying that over again to this kid, like, "You got to know." And that's what I want to say to you guys, that you got to know what you believe in. If you don't know what you believe in, you'll fall for anything. And that is what happened here. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew what they believed in. So right now, I'm telling you guys, there are convictions that we have to have as believers that are written right here in God's Word. And you got to know what you believe in. Point number 2, write this down. Don't back down in the face of adversity. Go to verse 16 with me. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." Think of the gall, the fearlessness that they said to the king. "We don't even need to answer you." Verse 17 says, "If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king." They had such great faith in their God would deliver them. Verse 18, "But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." okay? They didn't back down in the face of adversity, in a moment where they could have said, you know what, I'm gonna die for standing up for what I believe in. I'm just gonna bow down, ask for forgiveness. No, they stood up for what they believed in, and they didn't back down in the face of adversity. And I want to tell you a quick story. Back in junior high, I've spoke of this trip before, where my dad took me out west to help a real cowboy, a real rancher. And I remember we were on the ranch, and we were herding cattle and moving them to the next field. And I had to stand at a gate. It was an open gate, an open area in the fence where the cattle could get through. And the cowboy just said, go stand there. I mean, this is like hundreds and hundreds of cattle, like big steers, longhorns, that were herding. He said, stand right there. Don't worry. He said, none of the cows are going to run over you. None of the bulls are going to run over you. Just stand there. But I need you to stand there because they can't go through this gap in the fence. Because if they do, then I'm going to lose all my cattle, and that would have been a really bad deal. So I stood there, and I'm waiting. It's like 20 minutes before the cattle start coming my way. And like you could literally hear like thunder, like the ground of the cattle just running toward me. And I was like shaking. I was so terrified. All these hundreds of cattle are running at me. And I literally, he said, raise your hands up high and just start yelling. So I'm raising my hands up really high. I just start waving. So all the cattle see me. He said, if they see you, then they'll turn. And they just were running like fast at this opening. And I thought I was going to get run over, but I couldn't move. He said, do not move. They will not run over you. And right at the very last second, it felt like probably 30 yards away from me, they turned. They all turned at once, and they all went and stayed in the area that they needed to stay in. But I couldn't back down in the face of adversity. I couldn't back down in the face of something I was afraid of. Then all the cows would have been gone. And that's my encouragement to you guys. Like, if you back down, think if Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego backed down from the king. Then we wouldn't be talking about them to this day. And if we're all honest, like I know, and I'm thinking of times right now in my life where I back down in the face of adversity, and I'm ashamed of that. Don't back down. I know some of you guys are thinking right now, man, I wish I wouldn't have backed down when I could have made a stand for Christ in this way. We as believers, we can't back down. Don't back down, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I'll tell you why. But in number 3, write this down, point 3. You can have courage because there is another in the fire with you. And this part gives me chills. Verse 24, then the king Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. He answered, but I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire, and they aren't hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Guys, to make this point, I want you to check out this story from Bethany Tinkle. She's a very, very dear friend of mine, and she has an unbelievable testimony where she had to have courage and understood there was another in the fire with her. Check it out.
So I did not go to college to be an office administrator for a church. I did not go for ministry at all. I went for radiographic technology, which is imaging and medical x-ray, that kind of thing. And I did that kind of thing, not necessarily that. I did some medical office management and the x-ray, that kind of stuff. I was in the medical field for about 10 years. And in 2019, in the spring of 2019, God showed me and nudged me and pushed me in a few different ways. And there was an opportunity at the church in the office for an office administrator. And this was not something I had ever even considered wanting to do. I absolutely... my passion was and is just helping people. And so if this was a way that God could use me to do that, okay. But I was also really nervous to consider taking a position at our church, because Brandon and our family had started coming here in 2018. We loved it. And I was really nervous to start working here and not love it. Sometimes it's seeing behind the curtain can make things not so great. And so I was nervous, but after I was offered the job, and I took some time to pray, and I don't know if I was trying to talk God out of it or what. And I don't remember how long I took, but I remember talking to, it was Courtney, and we were talking on the phone, and she was asking if I decided yet. And I said, I just don't feel like one way or another, yes or no, if this is what God wants me to do. And Court said, you know what? We don't all get a burning bush, Moses. She was like, sometimes you just have to trust. And that's really hard for me, because I really that's why I went into the medical field in the first place, because people are always going to need hospitals. But she said, trust. I said, okay, and took the job, and came to the church to work, and things were going. I knew people, but I didn't know everyone very well. So there was starting a new job. You want people to like you. You want to get to know people. You want people to know that they can depend on you and rely on you. And start building relationships. And about a month in to taking the job at the church, I got a phone call it was Sunday morning. It was May 19th. I got a phone call from my sister that we needed to take my dad to the hospital. And so this was a thing. We knew he'd been having some medical issues on and off, but it was just something that we were dealing with. So I wasn't totally shocked that we needed to go to the hospital. But it was still like when we took him, it wasn't going to be a short stay. And I should say my mom and dad are divorced. And so they got divorced when I was little. And so he is not remarried. So my sisters and I we're his people, he's ours. So when something happens, it's us that, makes those decisions and helps. And so, sorry. At a new job, trying to get people, get to know people, and then go in and tell them, so I'm not going to be here very often. Dad's in the hospital. I've got to split my time between being here, being at home, being at the hospital. That's, really great for when you're starting a job. But that's what happened. And, so after about 3 weeks in the hospital, after Dad was in the hospital for about 3 weeks, my sisters and I, we made the decision that we are going to come home help bring him home to his home on hospice, which hospice is the end of life, long-term type care that comes to your house and helps with medicines and that kind of stuff. They're amazing. They're awesome. But you do the caregiving. So again, working at the the church for not very long. I remember a Saturday night, before we brought Dad home, I remember coming in and meeting with John Clark and saying, hey, I know you don't know me too great yet, but I'm going to be gone. I don't know how long. I'm going to be with my dad, because with hospice, you don't know how long. And I think in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe, 6 months, or I don't know. But, and I didn't know what reaction necessarily to expect from him. I knew he would be kind, but I had no idea the grace and the mercy that he would show me. There was no, you're not pulling your weight. You're not doing the job that we hired you to do. There was none of that. It was, you go do what you need to do, and then we'll be here. And so that's what we did. We got to be home with Dad for 10 days. And you know what? You talk about like really those times that there just doesn't seem like there could be any joy or happiness. And those 10 days that I got to be home with my dad, there was so much joy. And so I have no doubt that Jesus was filling that home. I mean, talk about being another in the fire. There was another in the fire. And so all that happened, he passed on June 19th, and I can't remember how many days. A few days later, we had the funeral, and then it was a few days later, John Clark called, and he was like, "Hey, we're excited to have you back whenever you're ready." And I told him, I said, I don't know that I can do normal things. I didn't really want to do normal things. I was like, I don't know if I can. And he made it very clear that he was not expecting me to come back to work and be at my best performance-wise. He wasn't expecting me to come back and do everything right at once. He wanted me to come back so that I could be lifted and encouraged by the people here. And he was right. So he was right. I mean, I sat in that office, and there were a lot of days if you would have walked by, I was probably crying. But you know what? God, he's not only with me, but he went before me. He put me in a position that I was, he prepared me for what was going to happen. And he put me in a place where, I mean, not that you feel the loss any less, but he put me in a place where he knew that I would be lifted. I would be encouraged to persevere. And I have met some of my best friends by getting to work here. And I just, his faithfulness and what he can do when we trust him with our decision making amazes me. And there's a song I just heard it a couple days ago, and it just said it for me. It says, I was sure my heart would melt with fear, but there was one who held me even there. He is God above, he is God below. He is God of everything between. There's no place you'll be where he cannot go. And so even through the hard stuff, it doesn't mean it's going to feel good, but I will trust, and I know that circumstances don't determine God's goodness, and he is always with us. And if we're here, he intends for us to persevere. And he doesn't expect us to do it alone. He will put the people around you, and he'll get you through it.
Man, how powerful was that? Thanks, Bethany, for sharing. And man, I hope you can see God's fingerprints all over her testimony, and how she could have courage because there was another in the fire with her the whole time she was going through that. And guys, I just want you to know the result of perseverance. We're talking about perseverance pays, and I promise it will. That for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you see at the end they were promoted, but also a whole nation turned to God. Okay? The king said, there is no other God like their God, and we will worship the one true God, or you will be torn limb from limb, he says. Guys, a whole nation turned to God because of their perseverance. They could have quit at any moment during that time, during that trial, during that adversity. And guys, that's my encouragement to you. It's April, we're finishing up a school year, the COVID year that everyone will always remember, but don't quit, persevere. Keep doing what God is calling you to do, even in these moments. Perseverance will pay, because where there's no struggle, there's no progress. So we have to embrace the grind. We have to embrace the hard times, because it's making us It's maturing us. And just like James says, it's completing our faith that we may be mature, complete, lacking in nothing. Let's go to cell groups right now.